Hello, everybody. This is episode 11 of the greatest NR2003 podcast on the planet. This is not your host, Braden Korioth, and I'm with I don't know if it's completely, I don't know how long he's going to be here, but Nico Servideo, of course, is here. And,
Hello.
the guy that doesn't really do that much, Connor Spradling, the
Yeah,
host,
I'm
I guess you
here.
could say.
So to
And we've got
go ahead, Braden.
We've got one hell of a guest, Dan Wilkins, in the house. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I am wonderful, Braden. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely wonderful to hear. Now, at this point, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm going to hand it off to the guy that does know what he's doing.
So yes, to touch on what you said, I'm going to see if we can get Nico on here full time. So he should be here for the foreseeable future, Braden. But yes, we have a very, very exciting guest this week, Mr. Dan Wilkins, owner of Score, the Dan Wilkins Broadcasting Company. It's great to have you here. Um, like I said before we started the show, I don't know a lot about you. I've only talked to you a couple times, so I'm really excited to get to know a little more about you. So,
Well, it's great to be here.
yeah,
I really do appreciate it. I think that the fact that we have a racing game that's over 20 years old and we're still recording podcasts on it and still engaging in forum discussions, it's a great thing. So, the fact that I'm so engaged in the game and that we're having this discussion is going to be great. So, I'm glad to be here.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I touched on it when I introduced you, but obviously you own Score. I have not raced in Score since it was the Dior days. I only made two starts. Braden has made one start, and one of our other drivers, Dakota Vega, I think still races full time there. Um,
I don't know. I mean, this can go off the record if you need to, but he left a couple weeks ago in the whole drama thing that
I
went
see.
on, and he hasn't been back. So he was second in points at one point, but I'm not going to speak on his behalf on whatever's going on in that world.
Yeah, Dakota. I don't want to speak for Dakota, obviously, but he is touchy with whatever leagues he wants to race in, which is perfectly fine. But what I want to
Mhm.
know is how long has Score been a thing, and kind of how did it get started?
So to run an offline league for a long time, the MSCCT Modern Stock Car Cup Tour on my YouTube page. If you scroll down on the videos tab, the oldest videos that you're going to see are MSCCT videos. What happened was that I had been introduced to NR via the TNT Man Idiots of NASCAR series, which I think thousands of us were
Hell yeah.
introduced because of that series.
Hell
Yep.
yeah.
And I actually did not know when I wanted to get this game, I didn't know it was free. I had no idea it was like free to download,
It was
like
free and
you
illegal.
could just free and legal, yes. But no, but I actually was at the time when everything got locked down in 2020, I was saving up money to buy this thing for $60 on
Mm-hmm.
eBay. And then somebody, because I had just gotten on Discord at the time, somebody texted me. They're like, the game's free, right? And I'm just like, no, I had no idea, because I had been playing like with the demo on my laptop for like 2 years,
Wow.
and just that's actually why I'm really good at Michigan. That's like my favorite track when we run like
Interesting.
Michigan BR. It's just because I ran it like religiously with the 11 car demo pack, and like I used to run the Brett Bodine Hooters car. Like it was very simple like that. But because my laptop at the time wasn't very capable, like that's really all I could run. I couldn't download the full game because it would take up too much space, and I didn't even know that I could download the full game without spending an arm and a leg on it. So around May of 2020, I want to say, we started the MSCCT, had a really rough first season. We actually halted it and simmed the second half of the first season
Okay.
because we had a whole bunch of people leaving and it was just a generally inactive place.
Mm-hmm.
Season two was incredibly successful. We got like 30 races done in like 12 weeks, and it was great, like because nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
It was 2020. I didn't have a lot of things going on. I was a rising freshman in a high school at the time, and the MSCCT, it lasted. It had two full seasons, I would say, because season one is kind of a lost archive. There's no clips of it. There's no videos. I just
Yep.
have certain screenshots, and that's about it.
Yep.
Season 2 was successful. Season 3 was successful. Season 4 was halted because I just lost interest in it, and then I started Score in April of 2022, and that's when we ran our first race. So if you're asking why I wanted to start it, it was because I wanted something different than an offline league. I think after running so many offline races over the years and hosting them and commentating them, I realized it was a lot like slot car racing. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good quote that I like to drop in there, is that sometimes there's some tracks that it's like you're watching slot cars. The same predictable moves are going to happen. He's going to make a pass on this part of the straightaway. And that's exactly what it is. So I wanted something new. I wanted something that had more variability and uniqueness to it.
That's cool. Yeah, I had no idea that essentially Score started out as an offline league. So,
I wouldn't say it started out as an offline league. I would say that what the MSCCT was and what Score is are two completely separate things, because I
okay.
stopped one to start the other. A new
Gotcha.
server, new people, new everything.
That's kind of where we are with the league that I co-own with Essex, the Eastern State Stock Car Series, and obviously our listeners know
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about that. But the other co-owner, Kez Hiller, that's a familiar name for a lot of us, used to run CART, the Canada America Racing Tour, and a lot of these guys, including Braden, Nico, and myself, sometimes consider CART and Essex to be in the same lineage, and they kind of are. But the CART server stopped to start Essex, essentially. So I kind of see what you're saying there. Just curious at this point, what season of Score are you guys on?
So right now we are in the 7th season. I would say that Score. Yeah, I was gonna say we're in season 7, but we never really had any breaks to go through that. So I don't know what the plans are after season 7, but that's where we're at right now.
And you guys actually halted for a little while this summer, didn't you? Or this spring?
Yeah, so we were just having trouble getting some people in, and I think part of it was that I had had certain races in season 3 and 4 where we were maxing out the TeamSpeak servers, and we were having 25, 30 people on a regular night at not so popular tracks. I think one time we had 25 show up at Richmond, which was great,
Yeah.
and we had another like 25 showing up at Dover, and
Have
you're
we
always
just
going.
speaking of
Yes,
Dover? I don't mean to interrupt you, but Essex just went to Dover. A lot of people you didn't expect to be there, and for Dover,
right.
I mean, it was crazy.
Upwards of 30 attended Dover. And I
Oof.
actually, 5 minutes prior to starting this podcast, just finished up doing penalties for that, and it was a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's always a cliche within our online leagues. You're always going to have an influx of people for Daytona and Talladega, all the
Yep.
super speedways, because they think they can win. They're not going to run if they know they have no shot of winning. So we always have seen, even in our lighter days in terms of lighter attendance, we've always had great numbers for the super speedways. But Michigan, there was one race where we had 32, and we used, or we still use Cam Jamison's TeamSpeak server,
As do we.
and we have 30. Yeah, as does
As does
everybody under the
everyone.
sun. Yeah, I mean, he's basically the backbone of this whole
He
operation.
really
But
is. Keeps, like, at least a dozen
you got to
leagues
have him on
alive.
the show sometime.
I know.
If you can find him somewhere in his neck of the woods, in Virginia, you're gonna have to bring him over here. But anyways, no, but we were just having declining attendance, and I was starting to get a little frustrated with the direction of the league.
Hmm.
I think because with certain things that were going on internally, and especially because my high school graduation was coming up,
Yep.
part of what I was thinking was, okay, people aren't showing up. We've tried a couple times to make things work. Let's just take a break. We don't need to halt things. We don't need to, throw the league into the dumpster fire.
Okay.
But we just need a break.
Yep.
We spent a month on hiatus, and I worked on the schedule for the next year. I worked on, revamping a penalty structure. I used that time constructively. And then we came back, and the attendance didn't exactly fix itself, but it was at least a little better. And we had better attendance at, where were we last week? Why am I blanking on this? We were somewhere last week, and we did better that time. And as we go along, sometimes you just need to take a breather and say, okay, we're not doing the best right now, but I know we can get back to there. So instead of trying to rush through everything and speed through everything just to get it over with, you pause and you regroup and you say, here's where we're going to go.
Yeah, and in my opinion, that's a really good thing to do. A lot of people, it seems like I'm guilty of this. It's kind of a meme in the NR community, but a row racing league. And it just got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore, and I just cut it off. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just over it. Whereas a lot of people, it just seems like that's the first thing they think of doing is just ending it all and never coming back to it. And I still
It's very impulsive.
Yeah, still at least once a month. It's kind of a meme. The server's still up. Kind of a meme in the server, but I have people asking when it's going to come back. And guys, it's been 3 years. It's not coming back. We all moved on to NR.
Oh, it's awesome.
But yeah, so I get it. I'm hoping Essex doesn't have to get to a point where we have to take a break, but if we do, I know I'm going to be the first one to step up and take that time constructively like you did. So that's a really good answer. So far, I have to say I'm loving how in depth all your answers are.
He's podcasting right now.
He's podcasting.
He is absolutely podcasting.
I said I do not. I go on very long answers. You can go into post and cut out any of what I say if you have a whole bunch of questions.
No, this is juicy.
This is stuff.
Juicy.
So,
yeah.
Braden, Nico, if you guys want to start asking questions, please go ahead.
So I've only made one start in your league, and it was at Chicagoland.
That was my first start as well.
I forgot what season it was, but I'm pretty sure that's when it was called Dior, right?
I have the date.
Yes.
I don't know what season, but it was May 7th, 2023.
That would probably be season 3 or 4. Here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing. I'll pull up my spreadsheet and I'll tell you, because I've got the race registry on here as a history nerd. You said May 7th?
May 7th, 2023.
Would be season 4.
I DNF'd.
Right there.
Season 4. He was on it. So
what about it?
The main thing I noticed, and I still have yet to reach, I guess, the level of immersion, is in the pre-race. The way you would start, name off the starting lineup, the way you presented everything.
You introduced the rookies. That was really cool.
Yeah. Where did you get the inspiration? Did anyone give you inspiration for that, or was that already a thing that was just kind of in your head? Because I've heard you've been talking about how you broadcast high school and college sports. Where did all that start?
Yeah, so a lot of times when I talk about inspiration from NR projects, it doesn't really come from anywhere other than my experience in the real field of public address commentary and broadcasting games, because, I am treating the NR lobby like I am welcoming guests into a banquet hall or something like that. I find it very important to make sure that all bases are covered. And I also find it important that everybody knows that just because I'm an official, it doesn't mean that I'm like a strict mother who's going to throw a sandal at you or something. Mm-hmm. I want everybody to know that we are here to have fun. We're here to just chill out. It's a Sunday night. You got work in the morning. You may have school in the morning the next day. Let's just chill out. It's 8:00 at night. Let's do our thing. But I think that the inspiration from it definitely came from my time as public address, because I served as the public address announcer for my town's Little League and Babe Ruth baseball for about 4 years before I started even grabbing a camera and doing play-by-play commentary here in South Jersey. So definitely when it comes to my presentation in the pre-race, I want the drivers to be informed. And part of that is why I mentioned the rookies, because if you see a name up there that you're not familiar with, I'll mention that. And I'll be like, hey, number 41 is a new driver. Let's welcome them. Let's give them a good time. And that's part of my ode to them, saying, hey, just because you're new here doesn't mean you're a foreign object to somebody, and just because we don't know you doesn't mean that you're going to be gatekept from being welcomed here. And that's something that I've always held dear, is that the only way that you're going to truly get more people coming is to bring that camaraderie of friendship together and basically tell people, hey, don't worry about all the weird stuff that's going in the world. Don't worry about all the problems that are going on, internationally. Right now, you're sitting in front of a computer screen. You've got pedals below you and a wheel in front of you. Let's just have some fun.
I have a couple things to say on that because that was really interesting.
Oh, that's great.
You touched on how you want it to be inviting and fun, and I think that's something that I'm not naming names, but just from the few leagues I've been in, it seems like a lot of officials and league owners kind of forget that at the end of the day, this is just a video game.
God. It's incredible that you just said
And
that.
an old video game at that.
An old video
I
game.
was going to make a snarky comment,
Yeah.
but I didn't. I held myself back. But now that you're going to say something, I'm looking at you, Cameron Jameson. I'm looking at you.
I wasn't going to name names, but Braden
I was
obviously
told
came
that 5
strong.
minutes ago that you should have him as a guest.
I will name one.
I was gonna
No,
say
Look
no,
at you,
but
Cameron.
I just, from the few leagues that I've been in, it seems like a lot of times people forget that we're just here to have fun. I can't do it nearly as good as you do, but I try to implement the same kind of, we're all just here to have fun, kind of, we're all one big family,
I feel like you and Kez do a good job of that, especially pre-race. Kez is very casual.
Kez doesn't go...
Those are the two approaches I like.
Kez doesn't go...
Like the one like Dan, where he has that like professional,
Yeah.
like I don't even know. I know I've been using this word like a 12-year-old, but aura. It gives the race aura,
It does.
It gives it
does.
like that, And Kez,
Well,
he has that casual
it's like a
approach.
real driver's meeting, basically. You're
Yeah.
introduced to the track, how long it is, how many laps, how many miles, because some people don't pay attention to that. And before I let you advance with what you're going to say, I was going to mention that I think part of the reason why I don't take my job, I'm not saying I don't take my job seriously, I'm saying that I take the driver's meeting a lot more casually, is because I am not the best driver in my own league. I'm not even in the top echelon of drivers in my own league. If 20 cars show up, I might not finish in the top 15. And,
I know how that feels sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of leagues where the people who are owning it and the people who are the administrators and the officials are constantly winning races. But I'm not one of those people. I feel like if I can just focus on the fun side of driving and just turning left for an hour and having a grand old time with it, then I can focus more on the administrative side and the penalties and the points and the schedule changes and the actual process and the structure of running the league more than I have to worry about how I'm driving. Because I've had to suspend myself from my own league, which is a very difficult thing to do if you're not, it's a natural human instinct to be like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't feel like doing that. But sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to be the better man and say, hey, I screwed up and I'm going to sit out X number of races because of it, because I'm going to treat myself with the same standards as everybody else. And I feel like that's another reason why Score is, at least in the people that I've talked to, pretty well respected, because we hold everyone to the same standards. Just because you run, iRacing Class A and you are really good at NR and you're winning every single week, that doesn't mean that you're held to a double standard. That doesn't mean that you are held above or below everybody else. You are treated the same for who you are.
As a league owner, I agree with every single thing that you just said. I have not had to suspend myself yet, but
no, not yet.
Not yet, but I'm not
you've been
afraid
put on
to.
probation.
I've been more than
Might have
willing
been
to put
warned or
myself
on
on probation, and it's just been a coincidence that when I am on probation, I haven't had anything that would lead to a suspension. But I'm not afraid to suspend myself, and I don't think Kez is either. Kez was more than willing to give themselves penalties tonight. I was actually the one defending Kez. So, yeah, that was a really, really good answer. Every single answer you've given so far has been super in-depth and awesome. So, I can't complain.
I have a quick question that I just thought up of. I've been sitting here and I've been praising Dan and how, well he runs his league and how much I enjoy it. And I realized, I just asked myself in my head, well, why don't I run as much? And it's because it's on a Sunday. I'm not asking this in like I'm trying to figure out a word that's not a no-no word, but I'm trying to like I'm not asking this in a rude way. There it is. There's my
Right.
buzzword of the night. I'm not trying to ask this in a rude way, but why Sunday? I'm sure it's obviously because of your scheduling, but I feel like Sunday is like the worst day of the week to run a league race for a game that's based off of a sport that runs its premier series on a Sunday.
Well, the big part of it was that at the time when we were trying to figure out when to run the league back in April of 22, 2 years ago, that was one of I conferred with my people that knew more than I did about running online leagues and knew what was best for me. They said, well, Sunday doesn't have as much, and the really simple answer is that Cameron Jameson, when we were starting to run the league, there were two options. There were two slots: Wednesday nights and Sunday nights, and yes, it does have to do partially with my schedule that I am usually off on Sundays and I usually work. Maybe not. I don't work 6 days a week, but I'm not consistent. I don't consistently have a broadcast at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday every single week. Score is something that I can structurally hold down and say it's going to be this time, this place, on this day. So part of it's a couple of different parts. Part of it was my work scheduling, but even when I started the league, my work was not as intense. I had only started to cover a couple of schools and a couple of different things, but now it's gone completely hogwire, and we've got like 79 broadcasts of baseball from February to May. So, that's a completely different topic, but it's kept a little bit of stability. That's another thing, but once we switched to Cam server in season 2, I want to say halfway through season 2, he only had 2 spots open, and it was either we switched to Wednesday or we went to Sunday. Now, that doesn't mean that in the future I won't change the day, but considering that we've run on Sundays for the longest time, it just makes sense for us that it's something that everybody knows. Hey, Score runs on Sundays. If you can't make it on Sundays, then like I can't move it right now. I can't just move it in the middle of the season. And we've had midweek races before. We've run races on Wednesdays, and we've run double headers before on Sundays. But I do agree with you with the point that NASCAR running on Sundays does conflict a little bit, and we do take off when like the July race at Daytona is happening, because nobody's going to miss that. But if they're doing a random Sunday night race that's not at a particularly interesting track, and it usually doesn't hit our attendance that much because the people would have shown up anyway, regardless of if NASCAR was running.
Right.
But considering that the races are mostly at 1, 3 o'clock, except for a couple of exceptions every year, it usually lines up pretty well that once the race is over, even if it ends at 6, 7 o'clock, people can still turn off the TV, they hop on the computer, and they jump in the game. So for me, Sunday has just been the easiest day for me to run the league, and that's been the one where I've had the least conflict over the years. I mean, even this year, very few weeks have I had any work on Sundays except for this.
I completely understand that. It's just unfortunate because your league is one of those leagues I would absolutely run as much as I could if it was just at the right time. Because a lot of the leagues around are very daunting, but yours it's just whenever I first ran it, I was already hooked. But it's just the date that gets me. Well,
that's part of the reason why we run it. That's part of the reason why we run at 8 o'clock, because
because
there's some leagues that are running at like. There's some leagues that are running at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm just like, well, my schedule Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and I go to my local Planet Fitness from 6 to 7 in the morning. That's what I did during the school year. So if I'm going to run a league at 11 o'clock at night, I'm not going to get the proper sleep. I'm not saying it's just for myself, but it's for everybody. Nobody wants to run a league on a Sunday so late that it's going to hamper their sleep for the next morning, especially if you've got work or school. So that's why I compromise a little bit, where yes, it's on a Sunday, and I do understand that is limiting and preventing some people from running, but that's the best for the majority of people that I know are running in my races, and it's best for me.
I
work a lot. Sorry, Connor. I work a lot on the weekdays. So on like after a race I know most of the races on Sunday are obviously like at 3. But after those
Right.
races, I'm usually kind of just chilling out because I know that I've got to wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning for work on Monday. So yeah, I'm usually just chilling out. Even like Zach Hillier, he just started Velocity, and it's on Saturday night. I still really can't run it just because how busy I am. Well, not busy, but on the weekends I just like to relax so much. I'm usually hanging out with my friends, doing so. I'm so chilled out that it's so hard for me to run those weekend leagues, except for Essex on Friday night because I mean it's a Friday night, so.
And, we're friends, so I appreciate when you show up.
Well, yeah, I mean all my buddies are in Essex, so I mean yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
Anyways.
To kind of build off of what you were saying earlier about your attendance not really being hurt by NASCAR races, I am honestly shocked by the amount of drivers that I've seen that, one, don't watch NASCAR, and two, aren't even from the United States.
It's absolutely insane. I'm so glad you said that. If there was a statistic you could put on paper for that, it is absolutely insane. But it's not in a bad way. It's cool. I think it's cool.
Because, NR is a way, if they get really into it, maybe they will want to watch NASCAR, and I think that's cool because
just a bunch of foreign people that you never would have thought would want to drive a goddamn stock car on a game that's 20 plus years old.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mean, even going back to our old road racing LRCS days, we had people from Europe racing all the time, and
just crazy.
Never watched a single NASCAR race, but they wanted their liveries made and all that kind of cool stuff, and I just thought that was cool.
They got sick and tired of the beans and toast. They wanted the real stuff.
They wanted cheeseburgers and American stuff.
Cheeseburgers, big sweaty balls, and stock cars.
That's right. So, Nico, if you have some questions, you've been pretty silent all night.
I might just let you guys do your thing. I have a question though. I know you've touched on it in some of the races that I've been to recently about what you want to do with Season 8. What you envisioned Season 8 looking like. I know the idea was tossed around of you doing some short tracks. That kind of got taken up by Bryson Miller as soon as you were thinking of that. What other ideas do you currently have on the table for Score Season 8?
Yeah, it's kind of like Bryson Miller's got like some sort of teleportal to my head where I was thinking of doing a short track shootout series and what makes a short track series. No, but I think with Score Season 8, I don't even know what I don't have any official plans. I'll tell you that. But thing is that the end of Season 7 is scheduled for July 14th at Homestead. And then the All-Star race, ever since we introduced it a couple of years ago, has always been on the Wednesday following the Homestead race, the final race of the season. So you assume you have a 4-6 week break in between seasons. I'm going to be straight into my first semester of college. I'll be my university I'm going to, Rowan College in South Jersey. It's about 15-20 minutes from where I live. So I'll be splitting time between an apartment I'm living in with my cousin and my apartment here. So whether I'll even be there for every race is up in the air right now. But considering the fact that I have a good idea, at least in my mind, of running the league business-wise, running it like a business, running it like an organization where you have to put people in certain spots, you have to give people certain tasks, you have to do this, that, and the other thing yourself, and you have to give these directions. I have the trust in the people that I know, and the people that I will know in the future, that if I give them the key to the city, that they won't screw it up. That they know the basics of running an NR league, where if I give them the instructions of what I want them to say during the driver's meeting, where, the specific tracks that I want them to use or any setup information, I can trust that we can get that done. But definitely the things that have come to mind, and like I said, these are not official, but you're more than welcome to put them on the record and interpret them in any way you want. Definitely more short tracks. I find that a lot of short tracks, especially the short tracks that aren't the NASCAR typicals. We've never run Martinsville, but I've seen that like we get good attendance we ran Irwindale once that had, that had 24. We ran Dover that same year and we had 28. There was a year where we ran IRP and it had 25 again. And then we ran South Boston the year prior and had 17. Still not shabby numbers. And like those are not your typical short tracks. They're not the short tracks that everybody has. Everybody's got a Bristol. Everybody's got a Martinsville. Everybody's got a Richmond.
Well,
But-
I mean, honestly, I feel like those big three tracks aren't as utilized as much as I'd thought. I think I've only ran one of those tracks once in an NR league. Completely random point that I just brought up, but I honestly feel
you are kind of right on that. I don't. But here's the thing: they don't run those tracks. They don't run those tracks because they don't trust people to run them.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
That's exactly why they don't run them.
That's the thing. But like,
yeah, I understand that. But it's crazy that it's because I feel like Kez blows my mind with it. He drives me insane. Whenever because during kart he had all these obscure tiny little short tracks and they didn't want to go to Bristol or Martinsville or anything, and it's like, well, how do you trust him to go here and you don't trust him to go to Bristol or Martinsville? We're going to all these tiny little short tracks like Capital City. It's this little place in Canada. It's like the shortest little thing you've ever seen.
Canada.
No, seriously,
Braden. That's the thing, though.
Braden has a point. If you want to talk about unknown short tracks, Kez is your person. I'm just looking.
I'll have to talk to him.
Looking at some of the short tracks that we've raced at, Concord Speedway, Kern County, Jukasa Motor Speedway.
What about that little triangle?
Capital City, Toledo.
What about the messed up triangle?
Oh, what was that called?
Whatever it was called. Fancy French Canadian name.
Yeah, just
the most
all of these
bizarre
super
tracks.
obscure, tiny little like 2/8 of a mile short tracks that he would make their league run on, and it was just
for points.
4 points. It was painful to get through
Hey,
sometimes.
yeah.
Because it was
I
like
heard-
4 short tracks that no one's ever heard of back to back to back to back. and
Now
it was
listen.
painful.
Some of them were great. Some of them.
There are some gems in there that we have come back to.
Like
in Essex.
Concord is a gem. Gosh, we're getting really sidetracked here. Concord is a gem. Capital City was okay. I know I mentioned it like it was some hellhole, but that place is cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's my thing to get us back on the record. People will say, "Oh, I don't run Bristol because I don't trust my guys. We're not going to run South Boston or Martinsville because I don't trust my guys." Well, I don't have any trust in them to begin with, so I don't really. As long as the people enjoy the track and as long as the consensus agree, yeah, this is a nice track. Like, for example, I'll give you a little secret. We're not running Sonoma in the foreseeable future. It didn't run well this year.
Kez.
And in recent years, it hasn't received the best reception. We left it off the schedule for a year and we replaced it with Laguna Seca. We left it off the schedule another year, replaced it with Riverside. Then we brought it back because it was 2 seasons hiatus. The roster had turned around and we said, let's give it another shot. Then we ran it this year and it was kind of meh. So we said, okay, we'll give it another break. So you can't trust your driver's ability. You have to trust what your community thinks and your roster thinks of your schedule. I have posted schedule concepts publicly to the Score server very regularly. And I said, hey, what do we think of this? I'll go over it with my they're called advisors if you look in the server there, but they're not like be all end all gods on Mount Olympus.
Uh-huh.
They're people to help the league and help me who doesn't know as much as they do. So I'm going to trust them. I'm going to trust the people that run the league regularly. If they say Sonoma's a bad track, well, guess what? I am terrible at road courses. I have never finished in the top 5 at a road course race in Score history, and I've run every single one of them except for one when I was on a suspension. So I don't have good judgment on road courses. I am not the person to ask if a road course is good or bad. I'm going to ask, Apollo Hyde. I'm going to ask Niall Gallagher. I'm going to ask Jerry Cook and Tyler Mallon, Ryan Santana, all those people that are good at road courses
Ryan
and good in
Santana,
general.
that's a name.
He won a Watkins Glen race here one time. That was just road course names coming off my head.
Ryan Santana and Braden and
he
I
comes
go
from
way
our
back.
Roblox league.
Yep.
We are the
so
reason
that was
he
just what
raced
came into my
NR.
head. But to close out my statement, like it doesn't matter if you trust your drivers, because no matter whatever happens, and whatever happens, you penalize them, you dock the points, you suspend them, you do whatever you have to do. But if you don't trust them to wreck, you're not giving them that potential. You're not giving them the opportunity. Because we've had really good races at tracks where I go into it thinking, geez, this is going to be a terrible race because everybody's going to wreck. And it starts out a little rocky, but then it settles in. People that aren't supposed to be there, they park and they leave, and then the race moves on, and you've still got 15, 20 competitive cars. It's great. So instead of not trusting your drivers, trust your judgment and trust the grand consensus of the community, because sometimes there will always be somebody who knows more than you do, and there will always be somebody who has a different opinion compared to yours. You may believe that Michigan is the greatest 2-mile super speedway known to man, but then somebody says, hey, you should try Ontario. Hey, you should try this, that, and the other thing. So trust your people around you, and that's what I have done to make these schedules over the years.
Yeah, that's a really, really good answer.
Listen,
for myself.
That is a fantastic answer.
And anyone else who is wanting to start a league or is running a league and is having some issues, being serious, take some notes, because Dan Wilkins does the best I've ever seen.
I don't know how many people actually watch. I don't know how long are we in here? What's the run time?
We're
still good.
We're sitting at 36 minutes. We have plenty of time.
Okay. I know there's plenty of time, but I don't know how many people, bullshit or not, if you are still watching this podcast, then one, thank you. You're a real person, because I don't know how many people say they watch and they watch like the first 10 minutes. But if you are still watching, go on Discord right now and DM Kez Hiller to watch this episode and put all the timestamps you can. I'll just leave that to listen to Dan Wilkins.
Just make sure you don't call him Kez Hitler.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was a real Freudian slip of the tongue. Yeah, but no, I was gonna say Nico before we got into his tangent. Nico was asking me about season 8 plans, so I will give you a quick rundown. Here are the plans that are not official, but right now, just thinking about it, thinking out loud. More short tracks. We experimented a little this year with putting more flat tracks on the schedule. This year we ran Phoenix. Kentucky is a little bit flatter than like your Kansas and your cookie cutters. And we've got Pocono later in the year. And we also ran New Hampshire in second round.
Oh, God.
That Dagenhart won. So that experiment kind of failed because people said, hey, you should run more flat tracks. And then people didn't really show up to the flat tracks, and the flat tracks weren't really that good. I didn't find the racing quality.
The flat tracks you named seem all right, though. Phoenix, that's a good track.
But they were all right.
That produced a decent Essex race recently.
I mean, they were all right in name, but there are so many different moving parts to go with it. It could have been a bad track type that we used. It could have been a bad I&I. Could have had too much grip. Could have been a bad setup. You can't just say, oh, you had a race at Phoenix that was bad. Well, that you couldn't possibly. I ran a race at Phoenix here, and it was great. Well, you might have used a different track. You might have had less grip in the corners. Like, that's just something where just because we like a track universally doesn't mean it's universally good at every level, because there's 20 versions of every single track that's on the NASCAR Cup schedule. You can go back to the 90s, the 80s. You can go back to all these throwback versions, or you can use the papyrus ones. So, the world is your oyster when it comes to those tracks, but just because you had a good Phoenix race doesn't mean that we had a good Phoenix race. But I will say, I don't think that after season 7 we'll be running Cup 05. I think we're going to go in a different direction. Again, that is something that we've been talking about for a little while. We even debated switching over a couple of times, but it was just like, the consensus was we'd rather not switch over our teams into something different because we don't like change. And that's what has been holding us back for the longest time is people don't like change. People don't want to see new things. People just want to go with what they already have. And if we were to change, it would end up being like a whole different identity. So what's been in the rumor mill for at least our crew, Cup 11, I'm sorry, not Cup 11, Nationwide 2011. I really like those spoiler ears that they have, the little, I don't know, the kitty
duck
ears
ears.
on the side of the
We've,
car.
Not duck ears,
Call
but the
call
duck whatever.
ears.
In Essex, we're
Just
using
because I got
NXS 16, and we've got the cat ears
Ooh.
on the spoilers.
yeah, I just
Is that what
I just
people
love
call
the
them? Cat ears?
I call them
I
cat
call
ears.
them.
I only call it that because I have a cat and 2 kittens, so
Yeah, I have always
that's
called them cat
where
ears.
it comes from for me. But yeah, that has been in consideration, and the next gens as well. There are not too many amateur.
Well, I thought
leagues.
the next gens had a lot of issues.
I wouldn't
hell,
say that they have enough that it.
I can't run the next gen at a few tracks without crashing my game.
I
That shit
don't.
never works for me.
I mean, that's why this is not official. It's been, it'll be tested. We'll talk to more people about it. I personally haven't. I've ran a couple, NR races with the next gens, just like travel with friends. Yeah, I haven't seen too many issues with it, but that's one of those mods where it could depend on the computer you run. Again, so many moving parts. But that's again just something that's been rumored. There's like Fuel, and there's a couple other leagues that run NCS, but they're more of like the higher end leagues. And we've always targeted the more amateur crowd, the crowd that's just starting to get into the game and wants
Yep,
like
yeah,
a
the
more
only league that
friendly
I've heard of that
environment.
seems to really break that boundary is IFAR, to where it goes from like amateur to like super serious.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if IFAR is like
I
that
have
serious.
I have great respect for Carmona and all the people over there. I actually commentated a couple of races for IFAR, as I'm trying to get back into the sim racing commentary world on my company. But the thing is with that is, it's not the owners who make or break people's perception of that league. It's the personalities. It's the drivers on track and off track who could make people possibly uncomfortable or in a bad spot. I've heard great things about IFAR and I've heard terrible things about IFAR. Whether any of them are true, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. That's the thing about what I do. You don't see me in any other online leagues. I don't run any other leagues except for my own. I'm in my own little corner. I see people that run a league every single night, and I just can't do that. So I stay in my own little corner. People come to me. I don't really come to them, but people seem to come to me and they stay. So for the most part, at least. So that's where we're at. And one more thing before I close about the season 8 rumors, probably expanding from 12 to 14 weeks, and then having 2 bye weeks for a total of a 16-week schedule. So that's 14 points paying races, and then 2 bye weeks, probably eliminating the exhibition races. They've been pretty lackluster these past couple of years. We ran Falkenberg in Sweden and Berlin, the track with no wall. That was last year. Tala Aziz actually won one of the exhibition races. And then this year we only had one, and it was at Walt Disney World. Pretty lackluster. Eldora and Daytona, Thornton. That pretty much. But it's just better to spread it out. I think if we give ourselves more off weeks instead of trying to cram it into a 12-week schedule, it'll make it easier. Obviously, more variety of tracks. Might be running an international race. I'm not sure, but definitely potential mod change, potential schedule format change. And what did I lead with? I was talking about the Sonoma not returning, but that's about it. Tracks drop off every year. This is the first year in league history we haven't run Watkins Glen. We had done 6 straight seasons with a mid-season Watkins Glen race, and this was the first one that we didn't. So maybe it comes back next year. Who knows? But next year is going to be all up in the air because of college.
Well, for those of you who race Score, you heard it here first. Your inside scoop on the future of Score. I don't have any more questions.
We're always
but
leaking stuff on this show.
If these two have any more questions, feel free to ask. If
well,
not, we can
I
move
did.
on.
I had another question, but I feel like obviously we have other topics to get to, but I really want to ask. So
Go ahead.
middle finger to you, Connor.
You're fine. Go ahead.
How did you get into commentating baseball? I love baseball, so I really want to hear this.
So my father does semi-pro football commentary in the Northeast, and one of the things about him was that he wanted to go to college to do what I do, which is sports communications. But his parents disagreed. They said, "Well, we want you to be a music teacher," because that was his second passion. His second passion was music. He wanted to be a music. He wanted to like kind of have music as his fallback plan because he plays the trombone. And his parents said, "No, you're probably better off as a music teacher." But he wasn't really happy with that. He went to college, got a degree from Trenton State, and he went to work in South Carolina for a year as a music teacher. Got hired after a year just because he wasn't a good teacher, and he'll say that himself. But even though now he's a commercial limousine driver, now he does sports broadcasting on the side. It's not anything to make a living, but it's enough to make him happy, and it's enough to fulfill that passion. For me, I wanted to kind of face the music, no pun intended, straight on, and try to make this a career. So when I was, it was 2016, so I was 11 at the time. I actually was playing Little League on the field that had the press box. And on one of the days that I wasn't playing, there were some kids up there that were, announcing the players' names, like now batting for Legion, that kind of thing. And I went up there and I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. I'll see how it is. And as soon as I started, I fell in love with it. So I did public address for a couple of years. Worked for a Pee Wee football team down the road here in Jersey, and then I bought a camera and a laptop and the cords that I needed in 2021. That's how I got started commentating baseball in 2022 as my main gig, but it started out as just public address at the local Little League when I was the same age as the players who were on the field. So definitely that's how it got started. And then it ramped up with COVID. I was in a organization called ML Bot Ball, which when the 2020 MLB season was suspended, they replicated the entire 2020 MLB schedule in MLB The Show, and did virtual games with real commentators, with custom commentary. I had like press sheets and everything. It was incredible.
God.
And the experience of getting to talk to like-minded people who wanted to get into broadcasting and didn't know where to start kind of gave me the right direction to be like, oh, I can do this. And I went to my high school's athletic director when I was a sophomore because a player on the soccer team had gone up to me and he said, hey, I know you do this live streaming for the Pee Wee football team. Would you mind doing a couple soccer games for the boys team? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I got the approval, and then I started doing that. And now I think if you look at DWB, we are at close to 350 broadcasts since 2021. So a lot of that is baseball, and that's how I got started, with just going up to the press box, incredibly nervous, and asking the chaperone if I could announce a couple names on the microphone.
That's
awesome.
amazing.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Because I find commentating to just be so. It's just one of those things that really captures me.
I'll be happy to guest on an ESCS or ESSCS race one time.
ESSCS Essex.
ESSCS. Close enough. It's a whole bunch of alphabet soup.
Yep. Well, Nico, do you have any more questions for Dan?
I'm all set.
All right. Well, we had a great 50-minute Q&A here with Dan. That was awesome. Thank you for all your answers. I
Perfect.
just sat and listened starry-eyed the whole time. So,
that was like the equivalent of biting into a juicy medium rare ribeye.
Yeah,
that was incredible.
That was awesome.
Oh yeah.
So,
I was about medium rare after the wiffle ball tournament today.
Moving on to
what?
moving on to some of the leagues that we run in. I personally did not run anything. I was actually at the Iowa Speedway this weekend watching all of the racing action there, but Nico and Braden had a little bit of experience. We'll start with Essex as we usually do. Essex just ran at Dover Motor Speedway. Saw a bit of a wreck fest. We don't need to get into the post-race shenanigans that happened there. We'll just leave that as it was. But Braden, you, I'm assuming, watched the race. Nico, you were a part of it. How did it go?
Well, I gotta let Nico go first because he was actually behind the wheel of a race car, unlike me.
Yeah, so same story, different week for me. Another good starting spot. I believe it was again a top 5 spot. Um, Ran pretty good early on. I got lucky. The two leaders took each other out coming off of turn 4. Thought to myself, hey, this might be a good opportunity to actually win a race. Robbie and Christian took themselves out. And then somebody decided to park it on the middle of the inside line, and when I was already running the inside line, so I had to wash up, and I ended up losing the lead to Dakota for a bit. And then all hell kind of broke loose. I got a pit road penalty, as per usual. Got caught up in a couple of wrecks. And then I had to drive my tail off at the end to get somehow salvage a 4th place finish.
Well, you had a good finish, strong finish. Somehow, even though it seems like every time the odds are stacked against you, you usually come out with a pretty solid finish.
Yeah, wait until Daytona.
Yeah, Daytona this Friday, so that's gonna be fun. Braden, how was it from the booth?
Well, kind of boring, I guess. It was constant stop and go, pretty much. The caution cooldown was used for pretty much the entirety of the race, but to no avail, because as soon as the caution cooldown ended, it seemed like something would happen. And there was even an incident where we had to throw a caution during the caution cooldown, which you never want to see that, but it had to happen, sadly. So, yeah, that's all I really got to say about it.
Well, pretty long penalty list. As I said, we wrapped that up prior to the show, so we'll see how people react to that. I haven't really glanced at general since then.
Hold on. I can't. Well, hold on. We got amateur hour here from us. This is a Kona 2 racing podcast. First win of the Essex season, Robbie Gilvin. How about that?
Robbie Gilvin, driving the 67 car for Kona 2 Racing, grabbed the win. He's the winningest driver of the team. He's just a beast every time he's on track.
He is our Jimmy Johnson.
I kind of need him to not win, but yes.
Yeah, he's killing it every single time he's on track. So we'll see how he does at Daytona. We should all be there, I think. So we usually work pretty well on the plate tracks, but here recently our luck hasn't really been the best, but we always seem to work well together. So that's what I'm excited for. My last NR start 2 weeks ago was at Daytona, and it was a win. So I'm going to see if I can back that up. Velocity, I didn't race, but I heard it was a pretty small field. Nico, I believe you raced. It was at Homestead, Miami. How did it go?
Same shit, different race. I had an easy edge on Zach and Dakota because I was able to save tires a lot better than they were. Then final pit stop, just too many mistakes afterwards. Got into the wall about 5 different times and could never catch back up to Zach. So
yeah, I've had
I
races
threw away
like
an easy one.
Next on the schedule for Velocity, if I pull it up here really quick, Sonoma. So I'm not looking forward to that.
You will not see me there.
I'm not.
You will not see me there. Oh man.
Yeah, not looking forward to that. But I'm gonna see if I can make something out of it. Velocity is still young. This was only its 2nd race ever, so I'm committed to watching it grow. I'm one of the officials there, so I'm going to see if it can blossom into a pretty good league. I unfortunately don't have the time usually to race score, but we do have the owner himself here. So how have the previous few races in score gone this season?
I was just about to say I pulled up my spreadsheet to go over just this.
I was excited for
No,
it.
Min was pretty eventful. We had a lot of passing. It was a relatively small field. I think we had 12 or 14, but I think that was the perfect size for something like Michigan, where we had relatively talented drivers, and there was a lot of good passing. The low and top lanes were pretty even. I mean, the top lane was the dominant lane, but it was wide enough to where you could fit 2-3 cars there.
Yeah.
And you know how it is at Michigan. Michigan's going to Michigan. Flan Wilson won, and here's an interesting stat for you. She is the first female driver to win a score race in its history, which is 76 races long. First one. We had this joke for years that score was cursed, wouldn't have one, and because Flan almost won the championship a couple of years ago. I think it was season 5 when Phil Parker won after not being in the top 5 in the final 3 races of the season, jumped to the first and won Homestead to beat Flan by 5 points. But
wow.
Right now, Cole Rodriguez is the leader by about 15 points. He's at 449 right now. He's won 3 races this year. He's really been the dominant guy this year for score. And I think part of that is just with the lower attendance. He's going to be one of the best guys there. He won Talladega, and he won Portland, and he won Kentucky as well. Awesome. I'm sorry, he won Sonoma. Cam James actually won Kentucky, but a good thing about this season, season 7, race 3, Keon Daly, not sure if you guys are familiar with him. He won his first career race, and he was one of the first drivers to ever sign up for score back in April of 2022. He had run, I believe if I looked at the math, he had run over 65 races without a win. And because of poor fuel strategy by the person in front of him, he got a last lap pass on a driver that ran out of fuel and won the race for his first career race. First in 65 races, I believe.
That's the number. Awesome. Good for that guy.
I mean, that's really good because he was well invested in it. He had a couple top 5 points finishes, and he had some really good seasons. And I think he had 6 or 7 second place finishes. So he was kind of like the Daniel Hemrick of this league, where he was good, but he just never had it at the right time.
I think I just got a nice preview of how my career is going to go.
Yeah, Braden actually had his first win was semi-similar.
Yeah.
It was Michigan, wasn't it? You won Michigan?
Yeah. This guy's forgetting about my one and only win.
The very first Essex race was at Michigan, and Kez Hiller was leading, dominating the race. Didn't run out of gas, but actually had internet issues. Game froze for a good 10 seconds from the lead, dropped back to 5th, and Braden passed Kez and led the last 10 laps or so, and Kez almost caught him, and Braden got his first career win at Michigan, which was really cool.
Hey, I didn't let him pass me though.
Yeah,
so it's not
you fought really hard. You mentioned just a little side thing that I kind of picked up on. You said about 14 or 15 is a good number for Michigan. I would have to agree with you. Our first race, like I just said, was at Michigan. We had 8 or 9 cars show up, and I feel like it was just small enough of a field that you couldn't be super competitive with passing. It was a lot of single file. Season 2, 3 or 4 weeks ago, Michigan, we had over 30 cars show up, and this is actually touching on something that you mentioned earlier in the show. It was a wreck fest for the first quarter of the race. Embarrassing as a league owner to watch it happen. But the cars that probably shouldn't have been there parked. The field thinned out a little bit, and we probably had 15, 16 competitive cars left, and it was really, really good racing. We had green flag pit stops, and it actually ended up being a fuel mileage race at the end. And
yeah, we've had a few of those.
15
I feel
cars,
I feel like we got a really little off topic, but the 2X is really causing. I don't know. I feel like the 2X tire wear with how long the races are, it's definitely caused some interesting finishes.
Phoenix was a fuel mileage race as
It
well.
causes people to think. That's the thing.
There's
And
actually some strategy that you have to think about. Instead of, we used 1X for season 1, and it was green flag. Maybe you have
And
to pit
and it's interesting too
right around
because you
single
had
file.
people last season, all the 1 times, this and that. We need to go 2 times, and now we're on the 2 times, and people are like, "Oh,
We need
fuel
to go to 1
mileage.
time.
This is
you're never
ridiculous.
go.
What's up with the?"
I'll tell you this right now, and I'll tell you this from somebody who has pissed off a lot of people over the years in the NR community and has made a lot of friends in the NR community. You are never going to make everyone happy. It's like
Yep.
trying
Right,
to
obviously,
blockade a store on Black Friday. There are just going to be people that are running you over. And I'll tell you this: we made the switch to 2X couple of seasons ago, and it's worked perfectly because before we had to make the 1X races so long that it would be like unnecessarily unnecessarily long, and you'd have to pit just because we made it that way. 2X, we could make the race 20-25%, and you would still have to pit a couple of times. So it's generally accepted that 2X is, as long as the tire wear isn't terrible, and as
here's the
long as you
thing.
don't have to pit every 15 laps,
I was
you're
going to
good.
comment on that because at Phoenix, a lot of tires went down because I guess the track was a little too grippy. I don't know what it was, but
honestly
I don't.
looked like the Cup race at
That's
Iowa this weekend. It was
That's probably going to have to be looked at.
long
The
runs
Phoenix
and
race.
then
That was
a right
interesting. I
front
feel
would
like that
blow.
was overlooked. I feel like that was overlooked
Yeah,
because
I
think I feel like there were some issues with the tires.
I made a mental note of it for next season if we go back to Phoenix.
And I was going to say one more thing is that with score and what we had been running in terms of why am I drawing a blank here? Oh yeah, so for some of those tracks that we've had tire issues on, like the endurance part of it is like just like season 1, we ran a race at Richmond that was 125 laps, and then the Homestead race that year was 107 laps. It was 180 miles,
Yeah.
and like that was an hour and 27 minutes.
Yeah, that's a
Like
long
nobody
race.
needs it to be that. Nobody needs it to be that long. It's 8 o'clock at night. It's a Sunday. Let's move on. Let's get out of here. So, these guys. Obviously, I think with the tire wear itself, people just aren't that self-aware. They have their tires as much as they should. So, yeah, that's what I got to say about it.
Yeah. Well, unless there's any more NR stuff that we'd like to talk about, we have gone over the hour mark, so I would like to go into some NASCAR news quick. Obviously, we've mentioned in the show, NASCAR was just at Iowa Speedway. I was there. I saw all 3 series run, ARCA, Xfinity, and Cup. I had a great weekend. I thought the Cup race was one of the better Cup races I've been to, because I've been to some snoozers. Curious from a fan's point, watching on TV, I heard the NBC broadcast was good, but how was it on TV? Because in person, it was great.
I thought stages 1 and 2 I thought were absolutely fantastic. I thought it was a great race, but sadly in stage 3 on that final run, the next gen short track issues really caught up to it. And Byron, I mean, he couldn't even get to Blaney's bumper. It was honestly a pretty hard watch. It was really frustrating,
I mean,
honestly.
in person, you could see him get closer, but as it
At
got
the end,
dark,
even Blaney said in the interview he was definitely falling off at the end. But I mean, like a 90-80 lap run after he took 2 tires, I mean that's ridiculous. Byron should have been able to get there.
he
That really took me out of it. I'm
as the
not
sun
gonna lie.
went down, the track gripped up. You saw less and less tire failures. As a Byron fan, I was really hoping I'd see Byron catch him, but I like Blaney, so I wasn't upset with the finish and the winner. I got to see a very rare Ryan Blaney burnout, so that was exciting to see. Nico, Dan,
And
if
I
you
was
have
just going
anything
to
to add.
say, yeah, I was just going to say, as somebody who is, you don't get a broadcaster every week, somebody who dabbles in broadcast production, I have been asked many times about my opinion on Fox or NBC broadcasts. And here's the thing. I think it goes without saying that the NBC broadcast package is a lot smoother. But again, I circle back to the point of you're not going to make everybody happy. people like Fox because they cut to commercial too much. Well, guess what? People complain about NBC in the commercials too. I have to run commercials on my broadcasts to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to watch commercials, then you might as well go to one of those fishy sites that, hacks all your data and go to like some sort of pirated stream if you want to watch one of those international versions.
This guy just called me out. That's how I watch my baseball.
The thing is that like we imagine that we live in a world where every corporation is going to sign off on running side-by-side ads, because what happens with side-by-side ads, your attention is divided. If a McDonald's ad comes up on the screen and it's a full screen ad, so it cuts away from the broadcast, your attention is on it. You are watching the commercial. When it's a side-by-side, portion of the race, you're watching the commercial. You are not engaged in the commercial.
Yep.
You might glance at it, but you're just watching the cars in a smaller window. They don't want that. And when you've got corporations that are paying millions of dollars to get these advertisements on their broadcasts, then that's just not something that you compromise. Hence why Fox only goes to side by side when there's like 15 to go, or like you're in a really important part of the race near the end of the stage. So I understand people's frustrations, but I think we have to be a little more realistic with it, is that, these are incredibly difficult productions. Out of all 4 or 5 major sports, NASCAR is the hardest one to produce by a country mile. Major League Baseball, 10 guys standing on a field. You follow a baseball, and you follow the people on the mound and at the plate. Football, very similar. Follow the ball. Basketball, follow the ball. Hockey, follow the puck.
Mm-hmm.
In NASCAR, you've got to follow 40 plus different drivers. It could be a half-mile circuit or a 2-mile circuit with thousands of feet of cords and wireless connections getting done. And this production is done in a truck with 30, 40 cameras. I've been in, back when it was, I'm trying to think, when NBC was still doing it, like 2018, 2019, when they came to Pocono, I got to be in the production truck as a part of a camp that I was in, and I saw it firsthand. There were 35, 40 cameras there, and it was incredible just how immersive it was, and how when you're a camera switcher, you've got to say, okay, 23, you're live, 37, you're live, and you've got to know as a camera guy what your assignment is. Mm-hmm. So, I really think that people that watch NASCAR very casually, or even if they watch it religiously, should give the broadcast some slack. As somebody who works in the industry, as somebody who knows the people that work in the truck every night, we talk about Fox being terrible, and we talk about NBC being so great, or the other way around, but they're still professional companies at the end of the day, and I think they deserve a little more respect. That's just my 2 cents on it.
That was
I completely
really
understand. Obviously, it's a good take, but I have my own opinions, because I feel like whenever you just watch, because I've been over the commercials. Obviously, I get it. Commercials are commercials. It's in every sport. That's
how you make money.
Exactly. It's the United States of America. My main problem stems from of how Fox has seemed, their whole Fox Sports in general across all of the broadcasts has really made this odd shift over like the past 5 years. Ellie Productions on YouTube just made a great video about it. The shift that they've made is just so odd. It's so incredibly odd. I feel like after watching NBC this weekend, even I watched an old Fox broadcast earlier this week from an old Michigan race. I feel like the direction and the production and the direction is just a night and day difference. Fox nowadays,
and that I will agree with you. Yeah,
Fox nowadays, they've got the cartoony graphics that nobody likes. Absolutely nobody. I've not seen one soul that likes them, and we're still using them because why not? I guess.
Yeah.
Mike Joy. He has really just lost all touch. It feels like it just doesn't feel like they're there. And Clint Boyer, he's just this goofball. He's not Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip was a goofball.
That's the unfortunate thing, is that the production. You can whine all you want about the kids being shown with 3 laps to go. Like if Christopher Bell is leading, they'll cut to a Christopher Bell fan in the grandstands. The thing about Fox is that you'll watch the 2002 Daytona 500 is what comes to mind. It was an NBC broadcast, and Alan Bestwick is completely immersing the viewer as if it were a radio broadcast. He's saying who's on the outside, who's in the middle, and who's on the inside. You see a lot more today on every network of broadcasters laying back their cadence and just letting you watch. And part of that is a good thing. I think that you should hear more of the cars going around the track.
There are absolutely moments where you let the viewer like take in the moment.
Exactly,
right?
but if you're on like lap 2 and you've already lost like all interest, it doesn't set you up for a good production. And I think that the production and the commentary itself, two very completely different things. You know, it's people want to lump Fox in one pile, but it really is so many different people. You know, like Mike Joy is a legendary commentator, but he's
Absolutely.
72, 73, something like that. And you could get a lot more engagement. I'm not saying that viewers and viewership is going to change overnight by the change of a commentator, but you hire Alan Bestwick, you hire Adam Alexander. Heck, if you bring what's his face? I mean, I know, why am I blanking? Vince Welch. You know, like they're not household names like Mike Joy has been for 25 years, but they bring more excitement. Adam Alexander's tone as well, just because he's more high pitched. He's a little more high pitched in his voice, and that brings high pitched voices and high pitched sounds bring more people excitement. And Mike Joy is kind of like you're reading a campfire story by the bedside.
Yeah,
so,
I feel like the past few years he's really settled down, and the booth just doesn't help.
Seem to have the same enthusiasm anymore.
So I have a question as someone who's in the industry and kind of understands broadcasting as a whole. Do you think it's a lack of care on Fox's part, or is it just like, I actually kind of made a point to my drivers at my team who've been there a while, like, you guys are getting too comfortable. You think you can just start to get away with some of these things and we aren't going to notice. As someone who's in the industry, what do you think it is?
Well, that depends on where Fox's money is. You know, they've got the football games, they've got not Sunday Night Baseball, but they've got
IndyCar now.
They've got the World Series. They're going to get IndyCar.
Well,
let's think about it this way: IndyCar to Fox is basically like NASA to the U.S. budget. People think that it's this big grand thing, but at the end of the day, IndyCar is just another asset that Fox has. Just like Disney owns the Family Guy TV show. Nobody's going to think of that as their driving source of income. But, you know, IndyCar and motorsports in general are not the moneymakers. F1 doesn't bring great viewership to America when it's not Max Verstappen winning by 53 miles. You know, it's a matter of where your money is and where your priorities lie. If it's football season and you've got an IndyCar race going on, well, what are you going to do? You're going to put it on FS1. You're going to put it on FS2. Because what's making you more money? The football games and the, you know, occasional college basketball game or whatever collegiate sport you're covering. You know, I think about it in the way of my own company where I've had to turn down gigs that I would have been paid for because I would be paid more money. So if I had 3 duplicates of my network and I said, you know, I've got DWB1, DWB2, and DWB3. Well, I could put the game that pays the least amount of money here. I could put the second game here, and I could put the highest, you know, the top dollar bid on the main network that we're going to see. So I think especially with Fox taking over IndyCar, I don't think you're going to see a single race other than the Indy 500 on the main Fox network. Every single one is going to be FS1, and I would not be surprised if the ones before the Indy 500, like Barber, and I think Texas is another one, like the ones that are in March and April, I think St. Pete as well, before the Indy 500, you might see them on FS2. You might see them on Fox Sports Plus. You know, IndyCar's media rights deal may be a lot of money to the average Joe, but it's not a lot of money to these corporations, and especially with the broadcast business being so large for these big four, ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC, you think about it in the terms of where your priorities lie. And with IndyCar and NASCAR in general, that's not their biggest moneymaker. So is it a lack of care? No. I think the people working in the truck genuinely care, and I think the people in the commentary booth genuinely care. That's why they're there. But you also have to consider, you know, Mike Joy's been there for 25 years. He's almost phoning it in at this point. So you have to think about it in terms of, where is the intensity and where is the passion, not the care, but the passion. You can care without being passionate. You can care about something that you enjoy, but you're just there. You care about it, you show up, but you don't have enough to be like fully energetic into it, if you get what I'm saying. So that's where I think it lies, where Fox Sports, NASCAR and IndyCar are not their moneymakers. They're not their primary sellers.
Yeah, just looking at the 2025 IndyCar schedule here, it does show all races are on main Fox. I don't think there's not any delegation yet, whether it would be FS1 or not.
That's probably because the NASCAR races are freed up now.
Yeah, I have heard that part of the deal was every IndyCar race would be on main Fox. Yeah, and that's why they took it over NBC, because Fox was going to give them more exposure, and obviously IndyCar's
That's really interesting. Really interesting.
I did not know that. It's a good point.
So it's not going to clash with NFL either, because St. Petersburg is beginning of March. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours about this, but moving on to the next NASCAR point. Big news broke. Obviously, Martin Truex Jr. announced his retirement from full-time NASCAR racing, but I've heard from people, other podcasts, that he would be willing to make an Xfinity start here and there. Obviously, Denny Hamlin has said that a 2311 ride is always available if he wants it. I don't think it's a surprise that he announced his retirement. This has been a topic of conversation for 2-3 years now. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, champion. I'm glad that he's being able to go while he's still maybe not at his prime, but still really competitive and still has a shot at making a good playoff run in his final year.
I mean, he's easily my favorite Toyota driver. He seems like one of the only really likable guys at the moment in one of those cars. Bubba Wallace, right? I used to like Tyler Reddick, but he's proved he's a tatted, he's a bit of a hack. But yeah, I mean, I've loved Martin Truex Jr. He's awesome. It's sad that he's going to retire. And people can get excited about all these Xfinity starts, but that doesn't really mean anything. He's retiring. He's done.
Something. I was listening to Door Bumper Clear this morning, and one of the things that they mentioned that I hope isn't true, but probably is that Martin Truex Jr. is one of those drivers that once they retire, they're gone. You're not going to see him a lot.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't like that to be the truth, but if he does, kind of go dark from the NASCAR world once he retires, I don't blame him. He has his own life and he has his own things that he wants to do. So
I don't know. The last guy who retired from the 19 hasn't been seen a whole lot either.
Yeah, but he's starting to show his face around these days. He's been in the booth. He had a good hour-long interview with the media once he got his Hall of Fame inductee. So hopefully we see Truex around the track here and there.
I was gonna say, as somebody who comes from the same region that Truex is from, because he and Ryan are from Mayetta in Jersey, which is about an hour away from me on the Jersey Shore. NASCAR is not all that popular in Jersey. Like, you'll see maybe some people show up to NJMP and others to some of the other tracks that are around here, like New Egypt and Bridgeport, but there is a lot of regional love for Martin Truex just because he's from Jersey. Like, Jersey hangs on to those guys. Jersey loves Shaq because Shaq's from Jersey. People from Jersey love Bruce Springsteen.
Don't even get me started on how passionate my dad is about Jersey, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, and so am I. I'm very passionate about New Jersey, but I'm not a Springsteen fan or anything. But the thing is that I have not seen that many drivers get that much love from their home state just because they're from there and just because they are used to that area. Like, I've never been to Seattle, Washington, and I've never been to Washington State, but I don't know how the Casey Kane love is there. And I've never been to, like Southern California, but I don't know what the love for Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon is there. And all of the Wisconsin and Michigan drivers as well. So, like a good half, maybe 60% of the drivers are from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, especially Dawsonville. But that's a completely different story. But outside of like Dawsonville and outside of like like what Ryan Blaney has basically over in High Point, like Jersey really has love for Martin Truex, and I don't see that many drivers have that much personability that they can connect an entire state, let alone an entire region. I see Truex stickers in Delaware. I see him in Maryland sometimes. Like he's kind of like one of the Northeast's connections to NASCAR, and definitely once he goes, I'm probably not going to see as much appreciation for Ryan because he's just not as well known, but he's a part of that family from the same town in Mayetta.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never really thought about that. Yeah, it sucks to see him go, but it was gonna happen eventually. But yeah, super great driver. He's had a great career, one of the best career resurgences of probably anyone in NASCAR. So yeah, it's sucks to see him go, but I'm glad that he gets to go on his own accord, and his fans get to see him have one last season. So I think that's really about it for NASCAR news. Next week is New Hampshire, so kind of a mid-tier track.
Nap time.
Yeah, I will close out the show with one last thing for all the Kona 2 racing fans. I broke to my drivers yesterday or the day before.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that one of their seats is heating up. I haven't said who. I've kind of given some.
No, you haven't.
No,
you haven't.
No, I've given some reassurance to some of the drivers.
I thought you were going to say
privately.
hints. I thought you were going to say hints.
I haven't given any hints, but besides Robbie, because Robbie wins all the time.
Firing Robbie, that would
be a dumb decision. Our three mainstay drivers for the last season or two have all been a little nervous, Braden included. So it's kind of been fun to watch as a team owner, watch them.
Yeah, I made Connor sleep on the couch last night.
Yeah, he's
a little sadistic there. That's a little cruel.
As soon as I broke the news, basically all three of them jumped to my DMs like, I promise I'll do everything I can to be a better driver.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Just to kind of, give a roundabout idea of what my DMs looked like yesterday. It was funny, but I've told them what they need to do to keep their seats safe. Only one of them truly is kind of out right now, but if I see improvement from them, they're good. Two of them are safe, but I'm not telling them if they are or not. I want to see them improve across the board.
What was the point of you bringing it up? Get out of here. Boo!
It's a Kona 2 Productions, Kona 2 Racing. It's the same brand, so I figured for those who are loyal to the brand, I'd like them to know what's going on. I will make my official decision before the Essex All-Star race at Atlanta on if that specific driver is staying or not. So we'll see what happens, but obviously Braden has his opinions. As always, I have to say thank you to Braden and Nico for being here. You guys have always been great co-hosts. Dan, thank you, of course, for being here. You were a great guest. The door is always open for another appearance on the show. If you look in the server, everyone in orange is a previous or future guest. None of them have left. The door is always open for anyone to return. You were a fantastic guest. Super thorough answers. Lots of discussion. That was great. So thank you for being here. It was a pleasure having you here.
It's a pleasure being on these shows, especially for these old games. It's always a pleasure to be a part of it. I think I'm going to be on the McBasket cast next week, so
I'm on the
I don't think we're
McBasket
talking. I
cast with
don't think we're
Braden
talking
this
about the
week.
NBA Finals.
Yeah,
Oh boy,
Braden and I are the guest this week, so I will definitely listen to your episode because you were a fantastic guest.
I don't know how Tristan is as an interviewer, so that'll be.
He
Well, listen, I feel like me and Connor knocked it out of the park here. I'm a whole lot
You
better at
guys
this
are
whole
pretty good. Out of the
podcasting
people
thing.
that have interviewed me, you guys are pretty good.
well, thank you.
Well, I'm not under the influence of anything. I can be pretty decent at this.
To answer your question, Dan, I listened to his episode with Phil Parker, and it was a surprisingly good episode. That was the first one I listened to, and I was impressed. He asked some actually really good questions to Phil. And Tristan, if you know Tristan, he's usually a pretty laid back, comical kind of guy. So he posed some good questions for Phil. So I'm excited to see what he asks for Braden and I. We're recording tomorrow, so I'm thrilled to be
There
on
you
it.
go.
Make sure you listen to the McBasket cast.
Well, you don't gotta, you know. We got our own thing over here. You don't gotta act like that's your Super Bowl.
No,
You don't gotta act like the going on his podcast is your
but
Super Bowl,
Tristan
Connor.
is a good friend, so I'm excited to be on his show. Last week's episode, he was the guest, so you can find a link to the McBasket Cast YouTube channel there. You will find a link to Score in the description below, along with Velocity and Essex. I will make sure that I link Dan's YouTube channel as well. Make sure you go check out all of his content. He's a great presenter for baseball, as we talked about in the show. One of the best league owners I've had the pleasure of racing with. It's only been 2 starts, but both starts were super impressive. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. That's something that I wanted to bring up. I'd love to start answering some comment questions. So that's really all
If you've
I
made
have.
it this far, then oh man,
Yeah,
thank
if you've
you.
made it this far,
Holy
this has
shit!
been our longest episode yet. So thank you for listening. And we'll see you next week. Next week's going to be a pretty normal episode, no guest. But 2 weeks from now, we will have Robbie Gilvin on the show. So look forward to that. As always, thank you for listening. Thanks to all of our guests. Thanks to our hosts. And we'll see you next week.